Hello, everybody. Welcome to another NintendoFuse Game Chat. Today we are talking about Shadows Over Loathing. But I'm not alone here. I'm joined today by both Steve
Hey guys.
and Greg.
Hey everyone.
Now, Shadows Over Loathing is almost like a tabletop style Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. It was released on April 19th, 2023, from Asymmetric, and it's on the Switch right now. And full disclosure, we did receive codes for this, so thank you very much for that. So this is a sequel to West of Loathing, already available on the Switch, and let's toss it to you first, Steve, because you didn't get to play West of Loathing. So this is your first experience in this universe.
Yeah, and it was really kind of something that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. I think I didn't really know what I was getting into. I remember seeing West of Loathing, and I remember you guys talked about enjoying it and everything, but I didn't think it was something I would enjoy, and so I just passed on it, and that was fine. And then we got codes for Shadows, and I was like, I'll go ahead, and try this. And I've been so sucked into this game. It's been my go-to game on the Switch. In fact, I've needed to play other games for reviews, and I've had to pull myself away from playing Shadows Over Loathing. So yeah, I've enjoyed it. I have some little minor gripes about it, but overall, it's been a really, really fun experience and something that I was totally not expecting at all.
I hear that. What about you, Greg? You and I both did West of Loathing. We actually talked with Asymmetric for a game chat, for an industry talk. So definitely check our YouTube for that as well. But what did you think going into the sequel, Greg?
Well, it was actually pretty interesting. I didn't know that there was going to be a sequel, and then pretty much it just dropped right after like that indie uh, update thing that they did that the Nintendo had posted, and then I was like, oh my gosh, they made a sequel, and then I'm definitely getting this because like you said, we really enjoyed West of Loathing beyond like a any good measure because it was such a great game. So then I definitely was going to be picking up this one, and then I started playing last night, and then everything was going incredible. I really enjoyed like it. Kind of just picked off almost where like the last one kind of ended in a sense. I mean, it's not exactly the same story, but it's almost like you just get right thrown back in with like the same like cartoony stick figure, black and white graphics, and it still like takes place like several like a century or two ago, and then everything is really great just to follow along with the really witty story that they have going on, and then doing all the different actions are pretty much all the same as from like West of Loathing. Like you can pretty much inspect just about every single thing, and it lets you either find new items or new information, and then you use that to go on and solve other puzzles. And then there's some light combat stuff. So it was pretty much set up exactly the same way as West of Loathing, and I've really much enjoyed my time with it so far, and really can't wait to continue it more so down the line, like I had finished West of Loathing.
Nice. Yeah, I jumped into this and I couldn't put this game down until like Steve until I finished it. It absolutely hooked me, just like West of Loathing, and like you mentioned, Greg, the time West of Loathing was like the Old West, and this is like the 1920s. So it's very, very different technology, and they joke about that too. There's one point there's a TV, and it's like, oh, you want to turn it on? It's like, oh, TV hasn't been invented yet, so you can't turn it on. There's nothing to watch. So I'm curious. First off, this game starts in this very isolated area, like this area that you cannot go back to. It's like a tutorial, but it's a puzzle solving area. And Steve, starting off into this, did you get everything done in that area, or did you feel like, all right, you know what, I can't do everything, I'm gonna have to leave and give up?
Yeah, yeah. I think I got most things done. There were a couple things that I didn't know that. So there was a couple things that after something happens, you can't go back and complete some of those things. And I didn't realize that going into it. So I think I did most of the things that I wanted to, but there was like one or two things that I wanted to go back. There was a specific fight that I was like, you know what, I'm going to come back to that later after I, level up a little bit. And you can't get back to that. And so I'm like, oh, that's too bad. And I think at the beginning, I didn't realize how much fun I was going to have, but I also didn't realize the type of game that I was getting myself into. And I didn't realize that it was going to be basically like a Dungeons and Dragons sort of experience. And so every turn along the way, every step along the way, like it affects your character, and you either benefit him or don't, but you're not really sure if it happens right at that time. Sometimes you figure it out right away, and other times it's later to figure out how those decisions impacted your overall gameplay. So once I was thrown into the very beginning, I don't think I realized all those things, so I wasn't necessarily making decisions with that in mind because I didn't know that was going to be the case. And so, but I feel like I've tried to do most things along the way. Like everything that I could do, I've tried to like search everything, talk to everybody, fight every battle that I felt that I could. Sometimes I did die because there was no way that I was going to be able to get through that battle. But I'm glad that, it just sends me back. And so it wasn't like a have to start all over again sort of thing. Like if you were actually in a Dungeons and Dragons sort of fight, you're like permadeath and you're like, oh, sorry, you're out of the whole thing unless you have a partner that brings you back. And that's the other thing, I guess, too, that like, you're in this solo, so like I have to basically rely upon myself, and that's it. So
yeah, you have a familiar and a partner too.
True, but I mean you're controlling them, I guess, or kind of. But yeah, that's I think it was a little bit, I wouldn't say jarring or off-putting or anything like that. I just wasn't aware of what I was getting myself into in the beginning, so I didn't know how to approach it. But I feel like I did it well enough.
Did you recruit the turtle in the beginning?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. That means you helped the turtle.
Yeah.
What about you, Greg? How'd you do in the beginning area?
I was certainly not expecting like it to open up like the way it did, because like you just have like the magazine on your face, and then you're like forced to like try to figure out like how to like get it off, and then it's like, oh, this like provides a good way to like pick the face design that you want. So I thought that was a very creative way to like actually like start a game. Like obviously most other games that have like character building, like you pretty much have all of that is done like before the game is even loaded. But this way, like you pretty much, obviously you're just designing a face and they only have so many pre-selects available. But I did think it was a very creative way to like have like the characters introduced, is just like have like the like a magazine over their face, and then you get to design it at that point. Because like I was saying, a lot of other games just like throw all that decision stuff right up front. That being said, I don't know if there's like certain designs of the faces that matter, like the outcomes of at the ending or anything like that, and various points like you can look in the mirror and like change your facial expression and stuff like that, and that's also kind of fun too. But in terms of the very beginning, I didn't quite know how big the area was going to be, and then I no doubt like missed doing a number of things, because like I inspected like the jukebox and got the free piece of meat, but then I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll see what it does when I put it right back into the jukebox. Then I just like changed the song, and then I wish I could have like still kept the meat, because then there was like you could have like bought like a drink, like a highly rated drink from the bar or whatever. So like I kind of regret not just spending it like so hastily like that. So I felt like I tried to do everything, but I no doubt like there's a lot of stuff that I probably missed, because I was also forgetting that you don't get to go back to the tutorial section of the game. And then I was also trying to like get kickstarted into the story as well too, so I wasn't trying to linger quite as long. But as soon as I hit like chapter 1, like I was, or like the prologue or whatever, then I was actually like fully exploring and getting like for like the gas area, I had like a 200% gas container, so I had like
Nice.
I got all 6 of the upgrades that was available. So
I just kept going. It was like it keeps increasing in size. I don't know how, but we're defying the laws of physics. I'm just gonna keep going.
I know, right? You have a canister that can only hold like 100%, and here I am holding 200% in that same container. I'm surprised they didn't have like a witty piece of dialogue to say like, "Oh, now we have enough to like get back to where I was from," or something like. Because they had like the whole conversation about, "Oh, it takes exactly one full tank of gas to get to our destination." So I'm surprised they didn't have like something witty for actually collecting a second full tank. But
Hmm.
that's neither here or there. But they're usually pretty good at having all those little pieces and details like all throughout the game, and definitely will be looking forward to finding all the other secrets across the various chapters.
Yeah, that's you guys did the same. I missed one fight, I think. The box truck or the box car, like in the back.
Mm.
I didn't have enough strength. And like you, Greg, I did the same thing with the meat in the jukebox. I put it right back in, and I was like, oh, that was a mistake. And that's something you need to know going into this game, is this is not your typical RPG where you can let me save, see what happens, and then reload my save. You get one save file, and you can't, it auto saves. So if you make a decision, you have to live with it or restart the entire game, no matter what. It is your one playthrough. And when you do beat the game, you can reload and right at the end of the game and go back and do other stuff. But I like that. Like normally I'm one of those, I'll save, see what happens, reload. But I kind of like that it forces you to just keep going and go with the flow. Like this is, you made the mistake, you're now living with it. And there are sometimes when you do die, you do get like perks to buff you up, to help make it easier. And the perks are not always good. There are times where I've gotten perk where I'm constantly on fire and I can't cleanse it. Like that's it. I'm now on fire, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting now. And there's areas where it's like, do you want to punch this? And you're like, yeah. And it's like, are you sure? And like, yeah. And you punch a like broken arm, and then you have -1 muscle or whatever. And it's like, oh, that's wonderful. Like this game is funny in that regards. And there's a couple areas that not only are there just weird and funny situations. Like there's one instance where you get an item and it's like, oh, you should destroy this item. And when I played West of Loathing, I did a lot of the like, oh, if I'm supposed to do something, I'm going to do the opposite. Like I'm going to push the boundaries. So I'm like, no, I'm not gonna destroy this. And it kept giving me prompts like, you really want to destroy this? You really should destroy this. And I was like, nope. Nope. And I left the area. And of course, the area I left got vaporized because I took the item out. You can never go back again. And the item description actually changed if you read it. And it says, this is your most prized possession, even though it doesn't do anything.
That's great. Well, that's good to know because I finally did destroy it at my last chance, and I'm glad to
Oh,
know what would have happened.
Oh yeah, if you leave the area, the entire place gets vaporized. It just gets sucked into a wormhole. It literally says like no house there. Like it's still on the map, but it's like a dashed outline of the house. It's
Gosh,
actually not there. And when you go to it, it's like, we probably shouldn't speak about this to anyone ever again. So the game is very,
that's
very
funny.
funny in that regards, and it's
Yep.
it's also ahead. And what I mean by that is like there's one area where there's a couple of places where you like need codes to get into, and there was one area where I was like, you know what, I'm not sure what the code is, so I looked it up. I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna try and look it up. You want to save myself some time, thinking I needed that as the next step of the puzzle I was on, but it wasn't. I was actually, skipping ahead. And when I went there and I went into the room that I was now unlocked, if I clicked anything, it was like, oh, clearly, or I think walking in, like, clearly you didn't figure this out. Clearly you use some kind of powers to connect to the future to figure out how to get in here, because you shouldn't be in here right now. And every time you try to click on any item in there, it's like, if you took this item, it would create a paradox. So we can't allow you to do that.
Wow.
So it's like, wow, that's funny, because I figured, oh yeah, let me just look it up, and they did a
Hmm.
little safeguard until you were ready to go into it, and when you were ready, it's like, oh, but you already knew that code, didn't you?
That's funny. Yeah, I love how it is. It's very self-aware a lot of times.
Yes.
I mean, even in the very beginning, like Greg was talking about, like it's like, oh, I see what you're doing. This is how I pick my character. Or this is how I pick my whatever. And it's very self-aware, which just adds to the humor. It adds to the quirkiness. And so while I think you're on like this intriguing story that you're like, I don't know what's going on, and I've got to solve this mystery and all that sort of thing. there's a really good level of humor and quirkiness that's throughout to like lighten it up along the way, so it's not some really serious story the whole way. So it's I think it's they really balanced that out both and both sides.
Yeah. Well, now, how far did you get, Greg?
I think it was only like about to start like chapter two. Like I didn't get terribly far. Like I did the dream sequence and got to pick the class of my character, and I think that's right around where I had like stopped like playing just because it was getting late and I needed to get to bed. But I definitely anticipate to be playing more of this like tonight and even going into the weekend and everything, just because of how awesome I've had with it, like experience I've had with this. I just really sucked into the story, and I really want to see where it goes. I do appreciate like all the different like things like it tries to like have you do. So it's like there was like a employee room where you're like, oh, do you want to say that like you're an employee? And then it was like yes or no, and then you like it actually can affect like your decisions. And I was like, well, I'm not actually. And then like the game's like, oh well, like it's still abandoned, but like it's good for you for being like honest or whatever. And then like it just lets the end anyway. So like I do appreciate those kind of quirks where they do like have stuff like that too. So it's I don't know how that if that actually impacts my character later on, but I did like the opportunity to pick the backstory in the prologue too. So it's like I picked like the one where I shot like a parking meter or whatever. It was pretty ridiculous, and it was like oh you get plus one like range like shots with like firearms and stuff. Like oh well that's really cool. So like and then it other characters like you can like there was like special prompts where you can like mention your backstory to other characters, and that's all really cool how all that's like woven into the entire adventure too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Steve? How far did you get thus far?
Yeah, I think I got just a little bit farther than Greg, but I've spent a significant amount of time in the first like the prologue in chapter one and everything. Because I've just been exploring everything and trying to do everything that I can. And so I think I've probably spent about 7 hours in the game, even though I've not, made it very far in the overall story. But I've just explored everything, talked to everybody, did every side quest I could find, backtracked in a lot of different places just to, and some of that backtracking was unfortunate that that I did it because I didn't realize that I couldn't get back to some places like in the prologue and the stuff at the very beginning. But yeah, I think from what I played so far, like I'm amazed at how much content is there and how much like all the different types of stories. I mean, it's really got all these different scenarios. It's essentially kind of a choose your own adventure kind of thing. I mean, there's somewhat of a linear overall storyline there. Similar, I think, somewhat with like a Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop kind of game. But yeah, there's so many different scenarios that you can go down, and it can be a completely different experience. And I'm just intrigued by anybody that can write that stuff, but to be programmed all in there, and in some like an indie game that is just available on the Switch is like it just amazes me that there's so much in there. So I'm excited to get it into it further. But yeah, I think I'm just a little bit into chapter 2 right now.
It's funny you say what you did in chapter one because I did the same thing. I I wound up because West of Loathing it's one map. It's one big
Mm-hmm.
map with a bunch of little things. So in this game I'm like, "Oh, I'm filling the map pretty quickly. I'm going everywhere, I'm doing everything." And I did enough random fights that I was able to level up and I started perking up and once I got the at the bottom left corner one where you instantly do damage to enemies, I was instantly one shotting. Like I was started horse laughing because like every fight I instant win, instant. So I'm like, well, if that's the case, I'm gonna grind because that's what you do in an RPG. So I capped everything before even leaving chapter one. I'm like, I got to be at
Nice.
the end of the game. I have everything on this map. Like I'm capped. Like I'm ready to go. And then it's like chapter two, and there's a whole new map, and I'm like, wait, there's a whole new map. What? So every chapter has its own map to explore, with a bunch of, and they're all different areas. The city, you got like the bayous, you got a college at one point where you actually have to take classes. You pick your majors and minors, and you have to actually pass the tests and graduate before you can do what you need to do. And everybody's different depending on what class you take. So you could go and you could take you have this three classes: a major, minor, and elective, and you could take a completely different major, minor, elective because there's three for each. So there's a bunch of different combinations of what to take, and they wrote all that in, and like it's just I've obviously I've beaten the game, so I've seen stuff you haven't seen yet, and I'm trying not to spoil that for you guys at all. But there's some really funny stuff coming up that I think you'll enjoy, and the storyline kind of gets crazy, but it's supposed to be it's just funny. It's almost nonsensical, and a lot of stuff doesn't make sense. Um, but it's not supposed to make sense. It's you know yeah,
Yeah.
there's one area where there's like two families who own a company and they're feuding with each other, and like oh, if you help me find my son, I'll give you this item. And the other one, well, if you've helped me find my daughter instead, I'll give you this item. But they know if you've talked to the other one, like you have to choose to switch sides, and then you find the two, and you can return them, or you can say go away, and then like the family gets mad at you if you let them go away, or you drag them back, and they don't want to go, and there's like alligator people are attacking, and like it's just crazy as anything, and it works. It's somehow it all works. Uh, there's some really cool abilities that come a little later on where you get attachments, where you can actually upgrade each piece of gear with different things. So like you could get like add burn damage to this weapon or add extra defense to this, piece of pants you're wearing and stuff. So you can find whatever works for you, whatever setup works for you, and then add,
Hmm.
stuff to it. I like that. I like that level of customization. And
Yeah.
there's this we didn't talk about the strength, moxie, and mystic,
Hmm.
and depending on what type of combat you want to do. But it's not just combat. You need those stats to affect other things, like break down this door if you have enough strength, or you can, confuse people with Mystic, or you can, have range with Moxie, or convince other people, if you have the right Moxie, and it actually allows you to enter areas or experience things in quests. So I know you guys are still in chapter two, but we'll go to you first, Greg. We're about to go in chapter two for you. Um, Playing it more, is this something that is going to take you away from Zelda? Because we're recording this right before Zelda comes out. Is this actually a pull? You mentioned this weekend. Is this going to be a pull away from Zelda for you?
I guess it ultimately depends on when I get a chance to actually start Zelda. If I'm able to put off like a few more days, then it certainly could be like a pull forward. But if I do like kickstart Zelda like right when it goes live, then it unfortunately might have to get sidelined. But it is a game I definitely seriously want to consider like playing a lot more of, just because I've so much enjoyed the first one, and I am already like in the clouds with like this one, and it's such a fantastic adventure game, and I really want to see like all those different story points that you were just kind of briefly mentioning.
Now, Steve, you never got to experience West of Loathing. I know the answer. I know you're going to continue this game because you're
Hmm.
already smitten with it. Do you think when you finish this game, you would actually, go back and play West of Loathing now because it's a whole different game? And
Yeah, yeah. I think I mean, there's definitely nothing other than purchasing the game that's really stopping me. I think it probably won't be something because of Zelda that I'll be not necessarily jumping on it right away. But yeah, I think my experience has definitely opened me up. If West of Loathing is similar enough to this game, then yeah, I'm all for enjoying some other experience very very similar to it.
that's awesome. So now the final question here. The game is $23 digitally. There is a physical coming from Serenity Forge as well, and a collector's edition if you want the physical. Would you recommend people pick this up at $23? Would you recommend them pick up the physical, like it's worth owning, or we can wait for a sale? Greg, what do you say?
I would say it just more ultimately depends on what kind of gamer that you are. If you're more of a collector, then definitely wait for the collector's edition or physical version. But if you are looking for a great game to play, then I would say just go ahead and spend the $23. I think there's a lot of content here. There's numerous chapters with lots of different branching storylines, and you can I know you can even like replay the game, so there's even like some different outcomes if you choose like different class combinations and different story outcomes as well too. So I think that there's enough there to warrant a purchase. I mean, obviously, if you can find a sale, then that's even more reason to get it now. But if unless you're like a collector, I see no point in waiting if you want to just get the digital version to get on this great game.
All right, Steve, same question to you. What do you feel?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's no doubt in my mind. There's tons of content there for $23 as well, and yeah, I think, and I've got some minor gripes with the games, but really with the game, but it's really is minor. Like one of the things that really is annoying, but it's minor, is that I would have preferred to have a button to go in and out of doors, because sometimes I walk just a little too close to a door and it automatically sends me through the door. I'm like, I would prefer just, walk up the door, and if I want to use the door, just hit the button. Um, Things like that, like navigating the menus is it could be better, especially when trying to find your items and equip them and enhance them and all those different things. I didn't realize until like a couple hours into the game that I could make notes on of my own in there too. So things like that are like, I wish they would have told me somehow earlier or whatever, but they're minor gripes overall. In general, it's got tons of content. It's humorous. It's an intriguing story. There's quirkiness in there that doesn't. It's not over the top. It's just enough, I think, to interest you. And like I said, I'm like not even close to finishing the game. I've already spent 7 hours in it. So if you just multiply that out, I mean, that's lots of hours of content for $23. I mean, yeah, no brainer.
Yeah, I'm actually going to echo that one little gripe you did mention about the doors. I did have one instance in one area where I needed to do something, and the object I needed to do it was right near the door, and I had to constantly go back to it. And every time I went back to it, I left, and I had to keep going back in. And it was minor. Like it got a little frustrating, but it wasn't enough to truly detract. But I totally agree with that. Like that is a minor thing. But as for purchasing this, I echo both of you. $23, this is a no-brainer. If you're a physical collector, absolutely support it. It's well worth it, because this is a small team, and they do some amazing work and amazing writing. And I think if you like RPGs, if you like tabletop style, if this discussion sounded interesting to you, if some of these storylines sounded like, wait, what? That intrigues me. It's worth the plunge. I think you can get a good, anywhere from 10 to 20 plus hours out of this game without breaking a sweat. So well worth the time and the money. So with that, I want to once again thank them for the code. Thank you for providing it for us to play and review. And for other game chats like this, including our industry talk as well with Asymmetric, please go to nintendofuse.com and youtube.com/nintendofuse. Greg, Steve, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yep.
My pleasure.
And until next time, guys, have a good one.